without any time from the IT administrator because of automation. So connecting and automating the hardware, the software, the application, and tying it into management becomes a very key benefit for the customer. And that's what we have in market today.
And do you think IT professionals are going to have to slightly adjust their way of thinking? Because when you've had a workload on a physical machine, there was the machine and there was the workload that ran on it. And then when we first started doing virtualization, we had those workloads came onto this physical machine,
right,
and they only moved in the event of a failover. And now we're getting much more to this cloud model where you have a bunch of processors and a bunch of processes, and you come in after the weekend and you don't know which box is hosting which virtual machine.
Absolutely right. And that's why management is very important.
Right.
So let me give you an example. I visit a lot of customers and I visit a lot of data centers. And the way I know which machines are virtualized is because those hardwares don't have a tag anymore. So if I walk in a data center, you'll see some machines with tag which says SQL, web, because the workload's on the physical and they're always there.
Yeah.
And there are machines that do not have any tags because they have different functionality depending on time of day, because the virtual machine has moved around. And the only way you know what's running on that machine is by firing up your management console and seeing what's actually running on it. So yes, there is a paradigm shift in how we function.
And I know you've got a background in high-performance computing, and that's very much how the high-performance computing world works, that you have a job and it goes to the most appropriate node, and you don't worry about which node it's on. It just runs on whatever node or nodes it needs to. And we're coming to that sort of free-floating idea with virtualization. But is that somewhere, I've had people put it to me that that's somewhere where Microsoft is very much more kind of, the box is partitioned up and jobs have a home, and VMware has got a much more floating view of the world. Do you think that that difference in philosophy is going away, or was it never there in the first place?
Yeah, I don't think that's an accurate philosophy, accurate view of how we think about at Microsoft or workload. Virtualization automatically brings us to the world where you're decoupling the workload from physical box. So we view it as floating, and that's why we developed the products we have in virtualization. In addition to that, I don't think it's a floating workload because you want some semblance. I think it's more about a service view where the consumption model becomes a service rather than a workload. I want web services, and I have an SLA which says I need that uptime. And that's how. So I think more IT, with virtualization, IT becomes more policy driven.
Right.
And because of rapid provisioning, it can be rapidly policy driven, versus in a physical environment where even though you have policy drivers, but you don't have the flexibility because the workloads are tied to hardware. So I think we don't have one view or the other. Our view is that workload should be provided as a policy and as a service.
Okay, I'm conscious that we're coming to the end of the time that we have here. So since I gave you a philosophical question there, let me try another philosophical.
Sure.
When we look back on how the IT industry developed kind of 5 years from now, and we say this was the really one big change that moving to virtualization brought us, what do you think that one big change is going to be when people say, they can say, well, this is the change that the internet brought, or this is the change that moving to the GUI interface brought on the desktop. So what's the change that virtualization brought to the data center when we look back?
I think, so first let's define virtualization. Today we think about virtualization as hardware and operating system decoupling, it's machine virtualization. But if you go up the stack, applications are decoupling itself. So think about AppV for our client, where the application itself is not even tied to hardware. And then if you look back about a month and a half ago, we demonstrated at MMS AppV for server. So the server applications in the future are going to also be decoupling. So now if you think about hardware, operating system, and the application decoupling, what's going to become very important is how these are composed, the set, when the user comes in, whether it be server users or whether it be client users. And this dynamic composition is going to bring the following changes as far as we can see today. It's going to change the mindset of IT to go from high-touch IT to highly automated IT, where you're going to see the workload. For example, today I read somewhere the high average in physical world is one admin to about 100 servers. But in a private cloud or a public cloud world, it will be at least those are the prediction, one admin will be to a few thousand servers.
Right.
Well, that doesn't mean that human is going to work 24 hours, so it's only going to happen through virtualization and or automation. And whether you call it a private cloud or a public cloud, the underlying enabling technology is virtualization, the decoupling and the automation and the provisioning that comes. So I think the big change that's going to come is the efficiency, where IT will become more efficient, but less touch. So high TCO, and it'll become more like a utility that you'll just be delivered.
So if I said to an IT professional, based on that, the one skill that you want to have for job security over the next few years is to be really good with the automation tools.
I think that is one, but if I'm an IT admin, I think the one skill I need to have is open mind to learning new technology, because we are in a paradigm shift and technology is rapidly changing. And I don't think it's going to be one way or the other. Like if you think about desktop as a service, for example, whether it's hosted or streamed. If you think about data center where virtualization is coming in. If you think about storage and the impact virtualization is having on storage and the network itself. I think there's going to be rapid change for the next half decade. And as an IT admin, if you want job security and be part of this, is you've got to have an open mind and go through the looking glass to the new model of business, because it's going to change across the board, not just at a hypervisor level, not just at management, not just at networking, not just at storage, not just at heating and power and cooling. It's going to be across the gamut. So it's like a rebirth of IT in some ways, and that means you must be like a child, extremely curious, and a learning machine, and that's what IT guys have to become for the future. Curious and a learning machine.
Zane, I think that's a brilliant place to leave it. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Cool. I think we're done.
Yeah, except that regulation one cut me out of that.
Apart from that one piece.
And then I'm sure there are things in there as you look, you'll find things.
Yeah, that's perfect because we've only got about 2 minutes of tape left as well. So that's